department discriminated against Black people and people with behavioral health disparities. The DOJ is also accused MPD of conducting unlawful stop, searches, and arrests. We see people approaching the podium now. Let's go to this press conference.
Joined by Reagan Fondren, acting U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Tennessee. Based on a comprehensive investigation of the city of Memphis and the Memphis Police Department, the Justice Department has found a pattern or practice of conduct that violates people's civil and constitutional rights. Our investigative team includes career attorneys and staff from the Civil Rights Division and the U.S. Attorney's Office, and more than a dozen experts who specialize in police department management, use of force, statistics, and other areas. This investigation was comprehensive and exhaustive. We interviewed dozens of police department officers and many city employees, as well as hundreds of community members and local organizations. We reviewed hundreds of incidents, watched hundreds of body-worn camera videos, read thousands of documents, and conducted statistical analyses of police data regarding officer activities and enforcement. Based on this investigation, we found that the police in Memphis use excessive force, that they stop, search, and arrest people unlawfully, that their policies have a discriminatory effect on Black people, and that they discriminate against people with behavioral health disabilities. Furthermore, we are also concerned that MPD officers unnecessarily escalate encounters with some of the most vulnerable members of this community, its children. Many dedicated police officers in Memphis regularly risk their lives to keep people safe and to protect their rights. The practices I described, however, violate the Constitution and federal law. They harm and demean people, and they promote distrust, undermining the fundamental safety mission of a police department. The city and police department can and must correct these issues. First, the police department must stop using excessive force. Officers often make tough choices in stressful circumstances, but in Memphis, we have found that officers often use unwarranted, serious force in response to low-level violations or traffic offenses.
Karma is coming. For example, to collect, baby.
Officers tackled a man and held him down by his neck for littering in a park. Officers routinely punish people who flee or don't immediately follow directions. Second, the police department must end unlawful stops, searches, and arrests. Without reasonable suspicion or probable cause to believe the people they stop have contraband or are dangerous or are a flight risk, officers often frisk, search, handcuff, or hold them. For example, police detained a Black man outside of a dollar store and struck him in the leg with a baton and pepper sprayed him in the face. Dollar stores in the area had seen a spate of robberies, but police had no reason to suspect that this man had anything to do with them. Further, without evidence that someone's car contains drugs or weapons, officers often tow and impound the vehicles. Third, the police department must stop policies that have a disproportionate effect on Black people in this community. We uncovered racial disparities that cannot be explained by differences in driving behavior. We found that MPD cites or arrests Black adults for marijuana possession at 5.2 times the rate of white adults, based on data from 2018 to 2023. Police cite Black drivers for equipment violations like tinted windows at several times the rate of white drivers. And between 2018 and 2023, they arrested 121 Black children for disorderly conduct compared to just one child during that time period. Fourth, the city and the police department must stop discriminating in their response to people with behavioral health disabilities. When someone in Memphis calls 911 for a medical emergency, medical professionals respond. But if someone calls 911 for a behavioral health emergency, the police respond, even when there is no evident safety risk. One woman encountered police officers 169 times over 5 years. In nearly 95% of these encounters, there were no criminal charges. Instead, police brought her to hospital care. Crisis intervention teams began in Memphis with officers specifically trained in responding to behavioral health calls. Nevertheless, we found that even these officers still use force without justification and without first trying to resolve situations peacefully. One crisis team member acquired the nickname Taserface for his inordinate use of the tool. These team members routinely escalated encounters and used unnecessary force against people with behavioral disabilities, even children. Crisis intervention officers taunted, threatened, and used force against an 8-year-old boy with a history of mental health treatment. Children often suffer harsh treatment from the Memphis Police Department. Officers approach kids aggressively, they use profane language with them, and inflict needless, unreasonable force on them. In one especially disturbing case, a 16-year-old black girl called the police to report that she had been assaulted. When officers arrived on the scene, she declined to hand over her phone. The police handcuffed her and she became agitated. The officers responded by threatening her. Ultimately, they grabbed her and pushed her onto the ground. This kind of encounter potentially harms our children more than the similar conduct harms adults, creating risk of serious long-term harm such as post-traumatic stress, diminished academic performance, or future delinquent behavior. The misconduct that we observe offends the dignity of Memphis residents. It creates stigma and trauma. The practical results of the police department's misconduct often include loss of transportation and consequently employment and separation of families. But let me be clear, these tactics do not make Memphis safer. Discriminatory policing erodes the relationship between the community and the police, making it harder for law enforcement to do their jobs, to detect and solve crime or promote public safety. The violations our investigation uncovered stem from Memphis Police Department's deficient policies, supervision, training, and accountability systems. For example, the department uses traffic stops as a crime reduction strategy, but has not adequately supervised those traffic stops or meaningfully assessed whether this approach actually reduces crimes or violates rights. Further, officers lack clear guidance on what they can and cannot do. Supervisors have ignored or excused clear legal violations. The department does not conduct thorough, objective investigations into alleged misconduct. And when it does identify issues, the process undermines findings and minimizes misconduct. The city has noted the cost of police reform and consent decrees, but the pattern or practice of constitutional violations our investigation identified costs the city too, and will not be stopped by hopeful words or preliminary changes. Achieving meaningful constitutional policing reform costs time and resources, but not implementing systemic reforms also imposes enormous cost in terms of citizens' rights that are trampled, personal and financial costs and injuries and deaths due to excessive, unnecessary use of force, cost in diminished public safety, and millions of dollars in legal judgments against the city due to constitutional violations. When the Justice Department works with police departments to achieve reform, these costs decrease. For example, our work in cities such as Seattle, Albuquerque, and Baltimore has led not only to declines in use of excessive force, but also reductions in violent crime. We stand ready to continue working with the city. The people of Memphis deserve fair, transparent, non-discriminatory constitutional policing. Nothing less. We are prepared to work together to write a new chapter for this city. But make no mistake, the pattern or practice of misconduct that we found in Memphis must end. And federal law authorizes us to sue for an injunction if necessary to accomplish that objective. Ensuring lawful, non-discriminatory, transparent, and effective policing is a top priority for the Justice Department. Let me now just talk about the sum total of our work. Since January of 2021, the department has launched 12 pattern or practice investigations into law enforcement agencies. We also are enforcing 16 pre-existing agreements with law enforcement agencies across the country. These collective efforts are resource and time intensive, but have fueled real reforms, including most recently in Seattle, Baltimore, Albuquerque, and more. I want to thank those in Memphis who worked with us. I want to thank the leaders, advocates, and family members who provided helpful information during our investigation. Memphis is the heartland of civil rights advocacy, and the people of Memphis deserve to feel safe. They deserve to feel safe in their homes, their neighborhoods, their cars, especially when you encounter police officers. I'll now turn the floor over to Acting U.S. Attorney Reagan Fondren.
Thank you, Assistant Attorney General Clark. My name is Reagan Fondren, and I am the Acting U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Tennessee. I stand before you as a native Memphian. The city is my home. I love Memphis, and I am committed to doing the work that it will take for our city to be a safe place for all people. We have a long history of civil rights organizing and community engagement. Those who marched for civil rights, sat in at lunch counters, and kneeled at churches sacrificed so that we would live by one rule of law, so that the same law would apply to all people, regardless of race, gender, or socioeconomic background. When the Department of Justice opened this investigation in July of last year, we promised to be thorough and objective, to follow the facts wherever they lead. And that is exactly what we did.
Hey, absolutely. It's time for her to go. CJ Davis got to go. You have got to go. Say you have got to go. Yeah, let's keep listening. She got to go. Hey, Ursula. Hey, Dot again. Hey, Empress. Hey, y'all. I'm listening with y'all. Let's go.
This process and these findings uncovered one
Please hit
thing
the like button,
on which I believe we can all agree. Our city has a lot of work to do. The resounding conclusion from this investigation is that there is a significant disconnect in the culture, communication, and directives that drive our city's law enforcement and the lived experiences and perspectives of the citizens of this district. It is a disconnect that erodes trust and makes our community less safe, but it is one that we have the power to fix. Memphians are rightly concerned with the gun violence and violent crime. They are also rightly concerned about the collective approach that we must take to tackle these issues. A collective approach includes law enforcement and citizens. Investigating and solving crime requires cooperation and engagement from the community, partnering with community members and responding to the problems that they face. It requires the community's trust. Without that trust, policing becomes less effective and far more dangerous for both officers and the people that they protect. That is why it was crucial that DOJ investigators hear directly from community members about their interactions with officers, the effect of MPD's practices, and their views on public safety in Memphis. The investigative team conducted extensive community outreach, including holding in-person and virtual community meetings. The team met with community members, advocates, union officials, criminal defense attorneys, prosecutors, judges, and service providers. We are grateful for everyone who shared their experiences and perspectives with us. We could not have completed this investigation without you. As part of this report, we recommend remedial measures to address the violations we found. These measures include improvements to policies, training, supervision, and accountability. These measures are just a starting point, a framework for a more detailed set of changes. We are committed to working with Mayor Young, Chief Davis, the Memphis Police Department, and our Memphis partners to move forward. I hope that there will be ongoing conversations with city leadership as to our next steps. To their credit, they did not wait for our findings report to make changes. Last year, before we opened our investigation, the city and MPD released hours of unedited camera footage of officers' encounter with Tyree Nichols. MPD swiftly fired 7 officers, and Chief Davis disbanded the Scorpion unit. Mayor Young has been transparent about the importance of a comprehensive approach to public safety, effective coordination among city agencies, and partnership with community members and public safety efforts. As we move forward, you can still expect our team of federal prosecutors to take on tough cases, whether those involve violent crime, drug trafficking, illegal guns, national security, hate crimes, or holding people in authority accountable for violations of the law. We will continue to work with law enforcement agencies, including MPD, to enforce criminal law and keep people safe. We look forward to working with the city, MPD, and the community to ensure that the city and police department protects the rights, safety, and dignity of all of its residents.
Yes. In terms of the timing of the release of the findings, how important was it to get the investigation completed before the inauguration of Donald Trump? The presidency could change the way these types of investigations look in the future, or even if these types of civil rights investigations exist at all.
The mission of the Department of Justice is to protect civil rights for all people. So the career employees of the Department of Justice, the federal prosecutors of the United States Attorney's Office will continue that mission through any administration.
Sorry, David Memphian. Sorry. One question, please. David Memphian?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll give it to Memphian. In terms of injunction, you mentioned, when would the Department of Justice sue for collecting injunction?
I will underscore that the city has been very cooperative during the course of this investigation. So we look forward to working with the city to figure out our next steps. We are pleased that the city has brought a collaborative spirit to this process to date, and look forward to figuring out how we can work together to address the very severe violations we have identified.
CBS. Thank you, Mr. Mulgore. My question to you, the city of Memphis has said that they will not enter an agreement in principle to negotiate a consent decree. First of all, they're saying that they're doing this because they're claiming they didn't have enough time to review and work with you also with that your findings. What is your response to that? Do they have enough time, or is it normal to go into these agreements without the municipalities?
Our goal ultimately is to fix the problem. Our goal is to ensure fair, constitutional, and non-discriminatory policing force for the city of Memphis. We hope to work with the city to implement the necessary reforms, to implement the remedial measures that have been recommended in the report. The city now has the report and can review it, and we hope to meet with them to move forward in the future.
Dr. King.
Hi, it was all responsibility. So one of the other reasons cited by the city of Memphis was they felt this investigation was much shorter than other practices. Investigations, except 17 months, typically 2 to 3 years. What is the reason why this one is a little shorter than other investigations?
We follow the facts and apply the law. Here we were exhaustive. I mentioned the countless, body-worn camera footage, video that we reviewed, interviews that we conducted, documents that we examined, data that we analyzed, experts that we worked with. We left no stone unturned during the course of our investigation. And the report that we are publicizing today lays bare the extent of the findings of violations of law that we have uncovered.
She got to go, y'all. Absolutely. And they need to get their money back from, what's his name? Dwayne Smith. I've been telling, y'all. Side piece,
This is
Sean.
not a new issue.
Not a new
In every
issue.
jurisdiction where we have uncovered violations of the Constitution and federal law, we have been able to work cooperatively with officials to figure out how to correct those violations. And we're confident that we can do the same here in Memphis.
You better get rid of C.J. Walker, the madam. She pimping out Memphis to the biggest dope dealer, drug dealer, human trafficker, all of that shit. She a part of the organized crime. She everywhere she go.
I'll start with saying that prior to the institution of this investigation, they did begin making changes as we referenced. The investigation, however, does not reveal small changes that need to be made. They are a pattern and a practice, which requires significant changes and significant investments in reform. We will continue to speak with city leadership, lay out our plan for their ability to institute these reforms, and we will see what the city's response will be.
So you got to micromanage.
Should this become actually?
So you're going to have to micromanage her.
The statute that we are using here, 34 U.S.C. 12601, authorizes the Justice Department to file suit. So that would be the recourse. But we are very hopeful that we will be able to continue to work cooperatively with the city to address the very real and significant
Y'all please hit the like
violations
button.
of law and the Constitution that we have uncovered.
Unconstitutional. She knew it. That's why her ass been quiet, y'all.
So I actually noted examples of success, examples of communities across the country where consent decrees have brought about significant change and transformation. In Seattle, for example, the police, after we came in and instituted a consent decree, the police have reduced the use of force in crisis incidents to less than 2% of encounters. In Baltimore, after the tragic death of Freddie Gray, they overhauled their fleet of transportation vehicles, data collection mechanisms, policies and training, and most recently only had 11 reported injuries during over 16,000 encounters. In Albuquerque, nearly 5% of the calls to the police are now diverted to Albuquerque Community Safety, which sends teams of civilian responders to help people with behavioral health needs. The police chief describes the consent decree as the best thing that's ever happened to the department. So consent decrees across the country have a track record of success, help bring about change and reform, and we are confident that a consent decree can help forge a new chapter for the city of Memphis.
They ass in trouble. They finna get sued out the woohoo. Stop being a part of the organized crime in the city.
Yeah, we absolutely spent significant time with the rank and file of Memphis PD, participated in ride-alongs. We heard from them about
Policing the police.
challenges that they face, the change that they want to see So hearing from the community and law enforcement was critical to how we approach this investigation. And we provide an overview of what we learned from police officers in the report that we have publicized.
Thanks, all.
All right, we are just wrapping up a press conference live in downtown Memphis with the Department of Justice explaining and talking and going into more detail about their 17-month-long investigation, their pattern or practice investigation into the Memphis Police Department. If you're just now joining us, I do want to recap you on the highlights of the big moments and things that were said. They said the city has been very cooperative and that they follow the facts and have a comprehensive report and investigation. Here's a lot of what they found. They read thousands of documents, they viewed lots of body camera footage, and they found that MPD practices discriminatory policing. They believe that they stop and search unlawfully, and they're mainly concerned as well with MPD possibly escalating encounters with children. Now, the DOJ believes that MPD has been in violation of the Constitution and that what they're doing, from what they found, undermines and demeans people in the city of Memphis. They've listed out several recommendations and things that must end now. They say first,
Effective
MPD
immediately.
must stop using excessive force. Number two, they say MPD must stop unlawful stops, searches, and arrests. Number three, they say MPD must stop policies that have disproportionate effects on Black people. And lastly, they believe that MPD and the city must stop discriminating against people with disabilities. They believe it creates trauma, it creates a stigma, but they also said this, last in part, they believe that changes, big policy changes are needed in training and in supervision. So still a lot to unpack here. I am not alone. We are joined with Otis Sanford, our political analyst here at ABC 24. Otis, you and I were listening to the same press conference. What's your initial reaction to
I know
this?
you got it,
Yvonne,
man,
this
that
was
the
a
cops can't stop paper route
scathing report that was released by
affiliates
the
anymore.
Justice
Absolutely.
Department. It has put the Memphis
Absolutely,
Police
Dottie.
Department on notice
Mad that he can't,
that the Justice
can't give
Department
word
expects
intimidate
not just
people in
minor
jail
changes,
that's gonna testify against his
cosmetic
ass.
changes, but wholesale changes. Basically, what they're talking about here is you got to change the culture of the Memphis Police Department, because the culture right now, and this does not involve everyone who is a police officer, but the culture is to escalate encounters with citizens, to mistreat people, as you said, with mental disabilities, to mistreat young people, some as young as preteens. And so this is a major report in terms of putting the police department on notice that the Justice Department expects some systemic changes to policing in the city.
That's right. And really, we're waiting in the wings right now for the city of Memphis to have their press conference. Well, we will bring that to you live here on air as well.
Right.
But we also have a few statements that came in less than 2 hours ago.
Right.
Let's start with the first one from Interim Police Chief C.J. Davis.
Right.
And it says, Since the announcement of the DOJ's pattern and practice investigation on July 27th of 2023, the City of Memphis and the Memphis Police Department have fully cooperated with the inquiry, which the DOJ did confirm. We have granted investigators access to interviews, ride-alongs, our data, policies, procedures, and body-worn camera footage. However, the DOJ's investigation has been largely conducted with little transparency regarding their findings, and we have not been privy to the identities of those who were interviewed, nor have we had access to the data analysis that underpins their findings. What do you make of this first one, Otis?
Well, there's a lot to unpack right there, Yvonne. First of all, Chief Davis talks about the lack of transparency by the Justice Department. Well, there are some people in this community who would say that the police department has not been fully transparent. Now, that's
Since the announcement of the DOJ's pattern and practice investigation on July 27th of 2023, the City of Memphis and the Memphis Police Department have fully cooperated with the inquiry, which the DOJ did confirm. We have granted investigators access to interviews, ride-alongs, our data, policies, procedures, and body-worn camera footage. However, the DOJ's investigation has been largely conducted with little transparency regarding their findings, and we have not been privy to the identities of those who were interviewed, nor have we had access to the data analysis that underpins their findings. What do you make of this first one, Otis?
Well, there's a lot to unpack right there, Yvonne. First of all, Chief Davis talks about the lack of transparency by the Justice Department. Well, there are some people in this community who would say that the police department has not been fully transparent. Now, that wasn't the case as much with the Tyree Nichols murder. The police department was very transparent there early on in releasing the body cam video and dismissing the officers and going public with their beliefs that this was a violation, a criminal violation. But there are some transparency issues within the police department itself. Secondly, it's not unusual for the Justice Department to not share the full details of its findings with the City of Memphis and the police department before releasing it. I mean, that's sort of like a reporter sharing their story with a person before you air the story. You just don't do that. But they did, as I think Kristen Clark, who is the Assistant Attorney General here, they did say that they shared an overview of what their findings would be with the city. So that might not be completely accurate there where Chief Davis is concerned. The bottom line here is that the Memphis Police Department will have its opportunity to respond to this. The mayor will have his opportunity to respond. We have a letter from him as well. And so we'll just see what they have to say, but this is a scathing report and you can't get around that.
Yeah, what we heard today was definitely disheartening to know that that is what they found. Let's take a look at that report and that statement from Memphis Mayor Paul Young. It says, on the evening of December 4th, the United States Department of Justice released the findings of its investigation into our city's police department. The report is going to be difficult to read. Our hearts go out to any person who has been mistreated by the police. That should absolutely never happen anywhere. While we fully support ongoing police improvement, we do not think it is wise to immediately enter into any agreement in principle or consent decree at this time. What do you make of this one, Otis?
Well, first of all, the fact that the mayor said it's going to be difficult to read
Yes.
tells us that they did know a little bit about what was going to happen. So the lack of transparency was not quite there completely. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is, I'm not surprised that the city of Memphis at this time is not entering into a consent decree. That it's too early for that right now. There has not been any federal litigation filed by the Justice Department yet. You got to go through that process. So I'm certainly not surprised that he would say, and Chief Davis would say, hey, look, we're not going to agree to anything now. We need to review the findings. We need to and take some steps ourselves to continue to make some changes. So I'm not surprised by that. Again, I want to hear what they have to say now that the full details of this 17-month investigation, I think it's like a 70-page or so report. I want to hear what the mayor has to say about it because, frankly, he inherited this. He was just sworn into office back in January of this year. And so all of this happened, especially the beginning of it, the Tyree Nichols murder, the launch of the investigation, all of that happened before the mayor took office. So, he inherited a bad situation here, and we'll see how he responds to it. We'll see how Chief Davis responds to it. But frankly, I want to see how the public responds to it as well in the coming days. And, Yvonne, the Justice Department made a huge issue here over the pretextual traffic stops. And that has been a huge issue in this community, as you well know, because the city council tried to pass some ordinances that would prevent these pretextual traffic stops in light of the Tyree Nichols murder. But the state legislature jumped in and said, no, you can't tie the hands of the police. They need to be free to stop anybody because that cuts down on crime. Justice Department says there's no evidence that it does that. So I'll be interested to see also what the state legislators have to say about this in the report as well.
Yeah, agreed. There's still a lot up in the air, a lot to discuss, and a lot to figure out. One thing I did want to ask you too. The city of Memphis believes that this was rushed. They released that statement yesterday. 17 months to do this investigation, and they were saying that it takes 2 to 3 years, or it did, in some other cases. What do you think?
Well, in some respects, they're probably correct. I've been around here a long time, and of course, this is not the first time that the Memphis Police Department has been in the lenses of the Justice Department. Matter of fact, there was a consent decree that was entered back in 1978, and I'm showing my age here because I covered that case as a reporter. That part might be true, and it might also be true, Yvonne. I mean, the first question that was asked at the press conference had to do with this. Were you trying to get this report out before the new administration comes in? I'm talking about the Donald Trump administration. There may be some truth to that because all indications are that that the next Justice Department is not going to be as aggressive as this administration has been in looking into the patterns and practices of city police departments. I don't know that that's totally true, but that's the perception here. Even though the acting U.S. Attorney, Ms. Fondren, said the career Justice Department people are going to continue to do this. Well, with a new administration, I'm not totally sure of that. So that might have been a little bit of a rush here, but 17 months with the exhaustive investigation, a lot of people that they had involved in the investigation, I don't think that that's too rushed in my mind.
Yes. But going back to what you said about the incoming Trump administration, it's not beyond the realm of possibility to think that things could change. In Trump's first term, if you remember, he did cut back on the use of consent decrees. Right. So who knows if he will have that same mindset going into the next 4 years.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that might play in the city's favor here. Even though, the city of Memphis, were, by and large, in terms of the voters, they were not Trump voters. But it's not unreasonable to believe that the next Justice Department will probably just put this investigation and the findings on a shelf somewhere and not pursue it. Certainly not pursue it in a federal court where a consent decree, if there is to be a consent decree, it would have to come out of litigation in federal court. And so I would not be surprised to see that the next Justice Department just sort of puts this on the back burner. That should not put efforts to reform the culture of the Memphis Police Department, though, on the back burner. And if we are to believe what Chief Davis said, what Mayor Young said, despite what the Justice Department is saying here, they will continue to push for reforms to address the issues, to make the necessary changes that will keep all of Memphians safe and secure.
Yes. Let's turn now to our Leah Williams, who is live outside in downtown Memphis. She was inside of the room where that press conference was, and she will have an update for us in just a few minutes, but also today at 11 as well, because there is just so much to unpack here. Leah, tell us from your end, what stood out to you?
Yeah, Yvonne, some of those practices that really stood out to me were those examples that she cited of use of force and those discriminatory practices that she said even disproportionately affected Black children. She even cited an example.
All right, it looks like we're having just some connectivity issues with Leah, and it's live TV. Sometimes that happens. We'll check back in with her in just a moment as soon as we can get her and get that shot stable. But still, a lot to unpack here. Another big question for you, Otis. You've been covering, of course, a lot of Memphis and the Mid-South for many, many decades as a trusted journalist in this community.
Appreciate that.
From what you can see and from what you know with your contacts and the people that you talk to daily on the street, what are people saying about policing in Memphis and what they want to see?
The cops
well, I get a mixed view here. There obviously are a lot of people, including those who showed up at the public meetings that the Justice Department had, who say emphatically that yes, the Memphis Police Department mistreats some people. The traffic stops sometimes can get out of hand. But there are also some people who would say that the police department has made great strides over the last many years to do better in its policing. So you get a mixed view here. I think one of the keys here in this investigation, in this report, that's different from previous investigations going all the way back to the 70s, is that now we have body-worn cameras. We have stationary camera. We didn't have any of that back in the 1980s and 70s when the police department was under investigation. So the Justice Department and the local Memphis Police Department have more tools now to make sure that policing is done well, because the camera eyes are on them at all times.
That's true. We have heard now from the DOJ, and we are still waiting in the wings to hear now from the city of Memphis. This is a live look at City Hall right now. You can see the podium is set, the mics are up, and we are ready in just a few moments to hear from leaders from the city of Memphis in response to the 17-month-long pattern or practice investigation into the Memphis Police Department that was just released by the Department of Justice yesterday. For those of you who are just joining us as we reach the top of the 10 o'clock hour, we're glad that you're here, and we're glad to help you understand exactly where we are and what we've learned so far from the Department of Justice. Let's do a big reset. And I want to give you the highlights that we heard from our leaders, Kristen Clark, Assistant Attorney General, and also Reagan Fondren, Acting U.S. Attorney General. What we've been told is that the city of Memphis has been very cooperative with this investigation. They've been following the facts, the DOJ, and they have put together a comprehensive report and investigation. What they found was quite disturbing to many of us to hear. They have found that MPD conducts unlawful search and stops within the city of Memphis. They're also very concerned to hear and see Memphis police and their interaction with children. Let's go now to a soundbite from that press conference from Kristen Clark.
Based on a comprehensive investigation of the city of Memphis and the Memphis Police Department, the Justice Department has found a pattern or practice of conduct that violates people's civil and constitutional rights.
They also laid out several different things that they believe must stop when it comes to policing here in Memphis. Number one, Otis, it was that Memphis police must stop using excessive force.
Right. Yeah, and that's been a long-standing issue in this community. Again, I go all the way back to the 70s here, and it was a lot worse back then. I mean, there was a belief that if you ever got stopped by the police back in the 70s, you better protect your head. Because they would use those batons, and we had a hospital back then called the John Gaston Hospital, and there was a joke running around the police department that said, you don't want to get a John Gaston turban, which basically meant they would beat you on the head so badly that you'd have to put a wrap around your head before they take you to the city hospital. That used to be the case. I don't think that's the case now, but we still have, according to this Justice Department report, too many instances where they, instead of de-escalating encounters, they are escalating them, especially with people who are deemed to have some mental issues, that they may be homeless people. There was the statement by the Assistant Attorney General, this Clark, who talked about a guy in front of a dollar store, and he got roughed up. Those are the kind of things that they're talking about here, and those are the things that the Justice Department says must end, and the police department really do need to address those.
Yeah, that was number one on their list. Number two was that Memphis police must stop unlawful stop, searches, and arrest. Number three, MPD must stop policies that have disproportionate effects on Black people. And last but not least, they said the city and MPD must stop discriminating against people with disabilities.
Absolutely.
Big, major talking points for all of us in the community. And they said we all have stake in this.
Oh,
that
yeah.
community members and police have to work together to make these systemic changes.
And that's what the Justice Department did in this investigation. They talked to a lot of people. Assistant Attorney General Clark talked about them. They talked to regular citizens. They talked to community groups. They talked to members of the police department. They did ride-alongs. And so they did a pretty thorough investigation here. And so I think their findings need to be taken very seriously by everyone. Again, I understand why the local police department and the city of Memphis mayor is not entering or even agreeing to some consent decree right now, because there's really no consent decree to be had. This is just a report. You respond to the report. You decide how you're going to make changes as a result of it. If this results in a lawsuit, an injunctive lawsuit in federal court, that's where any discussion about a consent decree would come up then.
All right. Still a lot of moving pieces in this, and still a lot left to go in that investigation and the other cases that we have going on here in Memphis as well.
No question.
I do want to mention this. They were highlighting specific changes that MPD has already made when it came to the Tyree Nichols death investigation and firing of officers there, releasing hours of video, and their cooperative effort with Memphis Mayor Paul Young. Hearing that from the DOJ, how did that make you feel?
Well, I mean, it did show me that the Justice Department is not just totally piling on the city of Memphis here. They are saying that some changes have been made, and we knew about those. Chief Davis got rid of the Scorpion unit, for example, and you know they have talked internally about not having these specialized units just sort of run roughshod over the community. But the one thing, again, that stuck out to me that we may not have talked about enough here is the police department has to do a better job of supervision and training. They talked a lot about that in that press conference. And I do believe that the lack of supervision and even the lack of training may have exacerbated that encounter with Tyree Nichols and led to his death. There was just not a lot of oversight there to allow those police officers to believe that they can do what they did. And also, again, we're talking about discriminatory practices with African Americans. That's something that needs to be addressed too, and we'll talk about that a little bit.
Yes, let's go now to that press conference with the city.
Hard work, effort, and time that they've spent in developing it. We certainly appreciate their acknowledgement of the efforts that have gone into the city of Memphis to date. And I'm gonna mostly read my remarks because I want to make sure that I get it all out. After I finish, certainly we'll open it up for some questions and answers. So before I say anything else, let me be clear that I believe that even one incident of mistreatment by the police is one too many. The report that DOJ released last night is going to be difficult to read. Some of the types of incidents that are described are simply not acceptable, and our hearts go out to every person who has been impacted by those actions. Hear me when I say these things, that policing in Memphis must always be ever evolving, constantly improving, and I'm confident that our team is ready to further the work of creating ongoing change. We believe that adjustments we've already begun making must continue and that they must expand. It's my job as mayor to fight for the best interest of our entire community, every member, and that's what I'm here to do today. After carefully considering the information that we received from DOJ, we didn't believe that entering into any agreement in principle or consent decree right now, before even thoroughly reading the DOJ report would be in the best interest of our community. It's crucial that the city has the time to do a thorough review and respond to the findings before agreeing to anything that could become a long-term financial burden to our residents and could, in fact, actually slow down our ongoing efforts to continuously improve our police department. The consent decree in Chicago has cost their city more than $500 million. The consent decree in Seattle has cost their city more than $200 million. In New Orleans, their consent decree has cost them more than $100 million. And from what I understand, in many cases, consent decrees are in place for at least 10 years or more. In some of these cities, crime has actually increased under a consent decree. And we can't risk that here, not in the city that I love, the city that made me everything that I am. We aren't alone in wanting to pursue a smarter way to make improvements, and we firmly believe that there is a better way. We believe we can make more effective and meaningful change by working together with community input and independent national experts than we can with a bureaucratic, costly, and complicated federal government consent decree. While the review period of this DOJ report predates my tenure as mayor, make no mistake that this administration takes the DOJ findings seriously, and we're going to review this report with an open mind to the recommendations. And while no police department is perfect, we have to strive to become as close as possible. Protecting the interests of this community is my top priority. And while we have much work to do, we are on the right track, as citywide crime has been down 13.5%. The Part 1 crimes and the more violent, those more serious crimes are down 19%. We've already begun implementing several changes within MPD, and we're committed to further progress. Our promise to Memphis and Memphians is that once the findings report is thoroughly reviewed, we'll work collaboratively with our community, local civil rights stakeholders, independent national experts, and the
Did he say he was gonna get
DOJ
rid of that lady?
to develop an effective improvement plan that transcends what is undoubtedly
Let me hear you
a
again.
bureaucratic and costly consent decree. We're working with the team now. Appreciate their acknowledgement of the efforts that have gone into the city of Memphis to date. And
She a problem.
I'm gonna mostly read
And
my
you a
remarks
problem if you
because
keep
I want
her.
to make sure that I get it all out.
Get it out.
After I finish, certainly we'll open it up for some questions and answers. So before I say anything else, let me be clear that I believe that even one incident of mistreatment by the police is one too many. The report that DOJ released last night is going to be difficult to read. Some of the types of incidents that are described are simply not acceptable, and our hearts go out to every person who has been impacted by those actions. Hear me when I say these things, that policing in Memphis must always be ever evolving, constantly improving, and I'm confident that our team is ready to further the work of creating ongoing change. We believe that adjustments we've already begun making must continue and that they must expand. It's my job as mayor to fight for the best interest of our entire community, every member, and that's what I'm here to do today. After carefully considering the information that we received from DOJ, we didn't believe that entering into any agreement in principle or consent decree right now, before even thoroughly reading the DOJ report would be in the best interest of our community. It's crucial that the city has the time to do a thorough review and respond to the findings before agreeing to anything that could become a long-term financial burden to our residents and could, in fact, actually slow down our ongoing efforts to continuously improve our police department. The consent decree in Chicago has cost their city more than $500 million. The consent decree in Seattle has cost their city more than $200 million. In New Orleans, their consent decree has cost them more than $100 million. And from what I understand, in many cases, consent decrees are in place for at least 10 years or more. In some of these cities, crime has actually increased under a consent decree. And we can't risk that here, not in the city that I love, the city that made me everything that I am. We aren't alone in wanting to pursue a smarter way to make improvements, and we firmly believe that there is a better way. We believe we can make more effective and meaningful change by working together with community input and independent national experts than we can with a bureaucratic, costly, and complicated federal government consent decree. While the review period of this DOJ report predates my tenure as mayor, make no mistake that this administration takes the DOJ findings seriously, and we're going to review this report with an open mind to the recommendations. And while no police department is perfect, we have to strive to become as close as possible. Protecting the interests of this community is my top priority. And while we have much work to do, we are on the right track. As citywide crime has been down 13.5%, the Part 1 crimes and the more violent, those more serious crimes are down 19%. We've already begun implementing several changes within MPD, and we're committed to further progress. Our promise to Memphis and Memphians is that once the findings report is thoroughly reviewed, we'll work collaboratively with our community, local civil rights stakeholders, independent national experts, and the DOJ to develop an effective improvement plan that transcends what is undoubtedly a bureaucratic and costly consent decree. We're working with the team now to arrange a series of town hall meetings so that we can get community and stakeholder feedback on the DOJ's report, as well as the path we will take to ensure an even better MPD and a better Memphis. I want you all to know and make no mistake that we're committed to ensuring that we have a best-in-class police department that respects all citizens. And to sum it up, we agree that our police department should always strive for improvement. However, we don't believe that the consent decree is the most effective way or efficient way to achieve the results that our community needs and deserves. We believe that by working with all of you in our community, we can faster and more effectively work towards the outcomes that we all desire. And while I haven't been able to thoroughly read the DOJ report yet, I'm happy to take your questions about our response to the DOJ request that we immediately sign the agreement in principle towards the consent decree. So I'll stop there. And I'm also joined here with Chief Davis, as well as our Chief Legal Officer, Tanera Gibson.
The Department of Justice just said at their news conference that they could sue for an injunction to enforce the tenets of this investigation. Are you prepared to go to court in order to avoid signing of the consent decree?
At this point, we're working to get through the report and thoroughly vet it and understand what is being proposed there, and we'll take it from there.
Mayor, I know that you said you're still doing the report, but you've also spoken quite strongly about your concerns regarding the consent decree. Why should Memphis trust its integrity concern the department due to constitutional violations to reform itself without something like the consent decree?
Well, Memphis is a creative community. We have people in our community that are committed to various causes, and this administration is committed to doing the things that are going to get the best results for the citizens of Memphis. And we want to pull together our own process to ensure that we are making the constant changes that are needed to protect our citizens. And we're willing to make that commitment to the residents. That's why we are looking towards holding our own series of town hall meetings in response to the report and develop an improvement plan or a plan that all of us locally can agree upon. And I believe that Memphians can drive our own destiny, and we can take the recommendations and the technical assistance of the DOJ as we get there.
Chief Davis, can we hear your response to the findings and also your response to residents who feel like these findings could be accurate?
Yes. So our response mine is very similar to the mayor. We haven't had an opportunity to really thoroughly look at the complete report. However, modifications and changes in the Memphis Police Department have been ongoing for some time now. Significant changes have been ongoing. In some of the areas that were outlined in the report, we have made significant changes aligned with the Department of Justice getting their support with some of the training that has been ongoing, not just this year, but in previous years. We have ongoing training and policy changes as well in the Memphis Police Department. In the last 3 years, we've changed over 700 policies in the Memphis Police Department. Policies that help to direct process, help to improve officer response. Community engagement has been a significant part of the work that we're doing to ensure that we don't just go out and create various types of policies and processes, but to also have our community members engaged as well, our community members and our clergy. We have graduated over 1,000 children. You know, some of the report talks about children, which is for me as a chief and for our department, we spend a lot of time with our children in our community. We've graduated over 1,000 children from our Dear Great program and work consistently to try to improve those relationships. So we're going to look through the report to ensure that we're not missing anything. We know that we have opportunities to improve every day. And so at this point, we are moving forward with working with our officers internally.
Democratic and costly consent decree.
And mine is very similar to the mayor. We haven't had an opportunity to really thoroughly look at the complete report. However,
You know you was part of the problem.
modifications and changes in the Memphis Police Department have been ongoing for some time now. Significant changes
You don't
have been
manage.
ongoing. And
You
some
just-
of
you
the
just put it out there.
areas that were outlined in the report, we have made significant changes aligned with the Department of Justice, getting their support with some of the training that has been ongoing, not just this year,
You are a
but in
part of the
previous
problem. You are
years.
part of the
We have
organized crime.
ongoing training and policy changes as well in the Memphis Police Department. In the last 3 years, we've changed over 700 policies in the Memphis Police Department. Policies that help to direct process, help to improve officer response. Community engagement has been a significant part of the work that we're doing to ensure that we don't just go out and create various types of policies and processes, but to also have our community members engaged as well, our community members and our clergy. We have graduated over 1,000 children. You know, some of the report talks about children, which is for me as a chief and for our department, we spend a lot of time with our children in our community. We've graduated over 1,000 children from our Dear Great program and work consistently to try to improve those relationships. So we're going to look through the report to ensure that we're not missing anything. We know that we have opportunities to improve every day. And so at this point, we are moving forward with working with our officers internally, working with the community, as the mayor said, to have open conversations about what this report means and how we can better the police department and Memphis.
The city has signaled price tag as a concern for not agreeing to the consent decree. But at the same time, we're also hearing that the city is very willing to embrace policy changes. What's the difference in cost there? Are we just more concerned about attorney fees?
Yeah, I think it's more important for us to put the money into the initiatives that are going to produce the results that we want to see as opposed to putting the money towards the costly bureaucratic process of monitors and all of the other things that come along with a consent decree.
Mayor, so I know you haven't looked at the report in total, but does it have anything in it that you didn't already know? I mean, we kind of knew that there were problems in terms of, police behavior, but have you found anything that you didn't know?
Yeah, again, I hadn't had a chance to really study it in depth, and so I don't want to speak too much about it until I can really take it all in.
What
Yes, ma'am.
affected the possibility of the incoming Trump administration not pursuing litigation for the consent?
We would have the same position regardless of the outcome of the presidential election.
Mayor Young, you talked about the fact that there are already some changes underway, and that Memphis needs to kind of set its own path forward. The state has been more than willing to show that it does not want Memphis to have a lot of independence when it comes to establishing policies with its police department. I'm thinking about the pretextual stop ordinance being rolled back specifically, and the DOJ's report talks a lot about traffic stop policies. Do you think that a federal consent decree would have helped almost supersede the state and allowed Memphis to make the changes that you want to see within the police department? And are you concerned that the city might get steamrolled by the state if it tries to institute some more police?
Is it over?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, as mayor of the city of Memphis, we work within the context of which we live. We work within state law and federal laws, and our goal is to develop a plan of action that takes all of those things into consideration.
Mayor or Chief, I know you said that this city and everything have already done some things that is not okay. Why don't you walk us through examples of huge initiatives
Speak up.
that have already been implemented?
Well, I don't want to speak to specific things from the report, but I can talk about some of the things that MPD has done. They've done extensive modification to.
They're not implementing it. They're putting it on paper
policies
and
to
still
include
have bad
the
behavior.
disciplinary matrix.
Stop that.
They've improved supervisory oversight and accountability. They created over 125 first-line supervisor positions, which never before existed. And this is just in the last couple of years. MPD has implemented annual training in de-escalation, bias-based policing, duty to intervene, active bystander, train the trainer, supervisor training, multiple leadership trainings, to include starting the MPD Leadership Academy, CIT mental crisis training for all recruits. Now all recruits are receiving that training, and they host CIT training annually for veteran officer certification. And then lastly, modified over 700 policies to include new procedures for investigating use of force complaints with mandatory alerts to address potential patterns. So those are just some of the things.
And the city has addressed in their response a rush to judgment because of the timing of this investigation. With a heavy emphasis on discriminatory policing by the DOJ today, do you still feel as though this is a rush to judgment, or how exactly do you address that discrimination aspect specifically?
Well, Again, I want to read the report in full, and before I even comment on any of the things that's therein. So we'll hold on that question.
Chief, one of the things that doesn't seem to be spoken about as much is that Tennessee is an open carry state. And while it's, we hear about Second Amendment rights, in the more rural parts, though that open carry law has a different effect in an urban setting like Memphis. Do you think this finding accounts for what your force is up against relative to firepower on the streets?
Absolutely. It does create a very complex situation for our officers, especially in an open carry environment. Naturally, when you have more guns on the street, you have more encounters with police officers, especially as they attempt to keep communities safe, especially communities that have a prevalence of violence. And I think all of the things that we're talking about today, including various state laws and, firearms and crime on the street, I think it all plays a part in encounters with our officers in our community. The balance is what we try to get to make sure that we have a balance that's fair and impartial and constitutional as well. So it's definitely a challenge. Memphis is an anomaly, but we're up to the challenge, and our officers have been agile, our supervisors have been agile, and we look forward to the progress that we know that we can make in the city of Memphis.
There's been a lot of discussion about how a consent decree could affect the finances of Memphis and how much it could cost. The DOJ report is very detailed and provides specific examples of how citizens in Memphis are affected by police misconduct on a daily basis. By saying you're not going to a consent decree, where do the citizens of Memphis point to for accountability and responsibility for what has happened at the police department?
Well, I think your point is based under the premise that the consent decree is the only way to get the results that we all seek to find. And our goal is to develop a process that is community-based, where we locally can agree on how we're going to get the results that all of our citizens want. As mayor, I'm accountable. All right.
Mayor Young, I had one question.
All right, this will be the last one. Go for it.
You said you hadn't read the report. Something that hadn't been mentioned when this investigation was announced, but was mentioned in the report and the findings, was the Memphis Police Department's CIT division and how it responds to mental health calls. Specifically, it referenced a lot of that other cities, they have non-police responses and also have police officers trained in crisis intervention. Are there any discussions going on within your administration to make a mental health response division that is not based out of the police department, something kind of in line with what the DOJ referenced in other cities?
Yeah, just the other day, Chief Davis and I were at Alliance Healthcare and looking at their new space and how they'll be able to partner with MPD on issues related to individuals that are experiencing mental health crises. So we're always looking at ways to expand opportunities to support those that have mental health issues. Again, I hadn't dug into the report, but certainly we always want to support those individuals that have those mental health challenges. All right. Well, I want to say thank you to everybody for being here. We really appreciate it, and I'm sure there'll be more conversation to come. Thank you.
All right.
You just heard from Memphis Mayor Paul Young alongside Interim Police Chief C.J. Davis responding to the findings from the Department of Justice. We do want to recap you some of the highlights of what they said if you're just joining us now at 10:21. Memphis Mayor Paul Young said that the findings in the DOJ report were hard to read. He is still waiting to read the entire report fully with some time under his belt. He says his heart does go out to people who were mistreated by the police, but that they are already making several adjustments. He has made it very clear that he has no intentions on entering into a consent decree at this point. And he believes it will be costly to the city of Memphis, and he believes that there are better ways to address the issues that Memphis police may be experiencing with national experts, the DOJ, but also community members as well. He says he is looking and reading the review with an open mind, but he believes that there is much work to do and that they're getting on the right track. Interim Police Chief C.J. Davis did not issue a formal statement, but she did answer questions while reporters were there and were asking questions. She says that they've made significant changes when it comes to ongoing training. They've changed more than 700 policies within the last 3 years, specifically with community engagement and officer response. But she also brought in children, which we know the DOJ report has been very, very specific about interactions with children. And she says that they have graduated more than 1,000 children with the DARE program. And that is true. I was one of the reporters there for that ceremony this year. There were about 1,200 of those students who graduated through the DARE and the GREAT program. So they are reaching children in that way as well. But that they look forward to making more progress with what they have. Otis, let's bring you back into this conversation. What stood out to you?
Well, let's take your last point there about the children. And of course, two things can be true at the same time. And it is true that the police department has done a really good job of reaching out to young people, to addressing the issues with truancy and a whole lot of issues around our children in this community, and they have done a fine job. But on the other hand, there have also been instances, and they didn't necessarily refute this, that the police officers sometimes get a little bit too heavy-handed when it comes to children, especially ones who don't necessarily toe the line completely, don't respond respectfully, and they may have been over-aggressive sometimes with some people.
Clean at the top, push the shit down to the bottom.
At the same time.
Start with that interim Chief Davis. What about the adults who are afraid to go to places?
I'm not surprised that the city,
the abuse of that regular, they're making law-abiding citizens victims.
They need to
trusting in Chief Davis and her guidance and her crew.
They probably need to
Bullcrap.
issue a more
You're not sensitive to mental health
later on once they do that.
Because you're working for the organized crime. You're under contract with crime.
You can't get around the fact that this is a scathing report by the Justice Department.
Get her out.
The pattern and practices of the Memphis Police Department, and they are going to have to address that completely.
Right. What do you think this does to the morale inside of MPD?
Well, I don't think it can help at all here. And we got to look at a little bit of history here. Morale has been somewhat of an issue in the police department for quite a while. Let's go back to even the George Floyd case. Morale started to go down a little bit then because, you know, a lot of people in the community just thought all police officers were the same as what happened in Minneapolis. And so morale is going to be an issue here. You know, the police department has been slow to get the staffing levels up over the last several years. A lot of that is because people are retiring from the police department because they don't want to have anything else to do with it because it's too tough. And so morale is going to have to be an issue that Chief Davis is going to have to address.
Something to consider for sure.
Absolutely.
Let's turn now to Lauren.
Department for quite a while. Let's go back to even the George Floyd case. Morale started to go down a little bit then because, you know, a lot of people in the community just thought all police officers were the same as what happened in Minneapolis. And so morale is going to be an issue here. You know, the police department has been slow to get the staffing levels up over the last several years. A lot of that is because people are retiring from the police department because they don't want to have anything else to do with it because it's too tough. And so morale is going to have to be an issue that Chief Davis is going to have to address.
Something to consider for sure.
Absolutely.
Let's turn now to Lauren Turnman, who is live outside of City Hall, who is inside of that room addressing Memphis Mayor Paul Young and also Interim Police Chief C.J. Davis. Lauren.
Yeah, that's right, Yvonne. There was a lot that we heard from Mayor Young and Chief Davis in regards to this press conference today following what the DOJ had said earlier. Specifically, a lot of emphasis here on community-based solutions that they are seeking rather than a consent decree in which they feel like might potentially cost the city millions of dollars. There are some other solutions that they mentioned, including some community forums, some different town halls, and Mayor Young has also been doing that, but specifically related to the findings of this investigation. We did ask a question about some discriminatory policing, and Mayor Young did reiterate many times that he has not yet read this report, but will be going over it more extensively. But again, saying a lot more community-based solutions that might be less costly for the city. Also, Chief Davis had mentioned a lot about some of the initiatives and efforts that she is making to try to help curb some of the discriminatory accusations that the DOJ has made against the Memphis Police Department, specifically looking at some of the extensive modifications. We know that there are some AI-enhanced cameras that are coming up, some exclusive training opportunities, and plenty of other things that she had really mentioned here to make sure that she reiterated that they are looking for solutions at this time that don't necessarily have to go the route of the consent decree. And again, a lot of different efforts. Mayor Young cited more than 13% decrease in crime across the city of Memphis, and a lot of other things that he was stating specifically to make sure that we understood more about the extensive efforts that the city is making. And again, of course, as we receive more updates in this case and on this investigation, we will update you. But for now, live at City Hall, I'm Lauren Sherman.
Lauren, thank you so much for that report. We appreciate it. We would be remiss if we did not mention the reason why we are here. Right. We are here because a man lost his life. That man's name is Tyree Nichols.
Right.
Tyree Nichols died in January of 2023. He was a father to a son who was 4 years old at the time when he died. Nichols is actually from Sacramento, but he came here to Memphis just before the pandemic and decided to stay after getting a job with FedEx. Nichols actually worked the second shift at FedEx with his stepfather, Rodney Wells, and every day they would come home together on their lunch break at about 7 p.m. and his mom, Rovon Wells, would have a meal waiting for them. He was the baby of his family and an avid skateboarder. Definitely we have to remember Tyree Nichols.
Absolutely.
No question about it. I mean, that started this whole thing. And again, we go back to the body-worn cameras and the stationary cameras. Without that, we probably never would have had the level that we've had since Tyree Nichols' murder. That started the whole thing. It started the investigation by the Justice Department. I do think that the police department and the mayor may have put just a little bit too much emphasis on how much cost would be involved here. Yes, it would be expensive, but I think they spent too much time talking about that because how much is public safety really worth in terms of dollars and cents? So I was a little bit concerned about that. And one last thing about they talked about the crisis intervention team, which actually really started back in after a similar incident with a disturbed young man in 1987. The police shot and killed a guy. So that has been around for a long time, and to hear that they're not doing a great job with the crisis intervention team tells me that they need to revisit that as well.
Yeah. It looks like, from what we've been able to hear from all groups, we've come a long way, but there is still a lot left to do.
There's no question about it.
Thank you so much, Otis, for joining us here. And thank you so much for watching where you are. You can stay with us. Coming up at 11 a.m., we'll be right back here on ABC 24 News midday at 11. But you can stay in the know anywhere, anytime, in the palm of your hand by downloading our free ABC 24 News app. Text the word app to 901-321-7520 to download it today. We'll see you at 11.
Fantasy Focus Football presented by Wingstop alongside Just Field Yates.
No fantasy football here. Y'all have a good one. I'll be back later. Mwah.